Madison Clark rushed through her apartment, frantically searching for her son's favorite dinosaur toy. 6-year-old Noah was already on the verge of tears, his small hands clutching at her dress as she rummaged through a basket of toys. "Mommy, we can't go without Rex. He'll be scared if we leave him." Madison glanced at her watch and suppressed a groan. She was already 15 minutes late for her blind date at Riverside Bistro, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Her best friend Jasmine had spent weeks convincing her to finally try dating again after Noah's father had walked out on them 4 years ago. "Sweetie, I promise we'll find Rex when we get back, but Mommy really needs to go now." She knelt down, brushing Noah's sandy brown hair from his forehead. "Mrs. Wilson can't babysit tonight. Remember how we talked about you coming with me to meet Mommy's new friend? You'll get to eat those fancy chocolate desserts you love." Noah's bottom lip trembled. "But I told Rex I'd take him." Madison was about to negotiate further when her phone chimed with a message from Jasmine. "Where are you? He's already there and asking about you. He won't wait forever, Mads." "Noah, please," Madison said, her voice tinged with desperation. "I'll buy you a new dinosaur tomorrow, anyone you want." The little boy's eyes widened with interest, but then narrowed suspiciously. "Promise." "Cross my heart," Madison said, relief flooding her body when Noah finally nodded in agreement. 20 minutes later, Madison hurried toward the restaurant entrance, Noah's small hand gripped tightly in hers. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she spotted Jasmine pacing nervously outside, elegantly dressed in a black cocktail dress that made Madison suddenly conscious of her own simple navy blue dress, hastily chosen after 3 outfit changes. "Finally!" Jasmine exclaimed, eyes widening when she spotted Noah. "You brought him! Madison, you can't—" "I didn't have a choice," Madison whispered frantically. "Mrs. Wilson cancelled last minute, something about her sister in the hospital." Jasmine pressed her lips together, clearly displeased. "Well, it's too late now. Jackson's inside. Table near the window overlooking the river. He's not what I expected." "What do you mean?" "Just don't judge by appearances, okay? And maybe apologize for being late. And for—" She gestured toward Noah, who was now examining a decorative plant with intense fascination. Madison's stomach twisted with anxiety. This was a mistake. She should never have agreed to this blind date. What kind of man would want to have dinner with a single mother and her child? But Jasmine had been so insistent, claiming that this Jackson Ryan was different, kind, successful, and supposedly great with kids. "Come on, Noah," Madison said, straightening her shoulders. "Let's go meet Mommy's friend." As they entered the restaurant, Madison was immediately struck by its opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, and the soft murmur of conversation mixed with gentle piano music. The maitre d' led them through the maze of white-clothed tables toward the far corner with panoramic views of the river. Madison spotted him immediately, a man sitting alone, gazing out at the water. He wasn't what she expected either. Instead of the polished businessman Jasmine had described, Jackson Ryan appeared almost ordinary in a simple button-down shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. When he turned to look at them, Madison felt a jolt of recognition. His face had appeared on the cover of business magazines. Jackson Ryan, the tech investor turned philanthropist, whose fortune was rumored to be in the billions. His latest venture was transforming abandoned buildings into community centers across the city. "Ms. Clark," he said, rising to his feet. His voice was deep but gentle, with a hint of a southern accent. His eyes, a striking shade of blue, moved from Madison to Noah, who had partially hidden himself behind her dress. "Mr. Ryan, I'm so sorry I'm late," Madison began, her voice catching. "And I apologize for bringing my son. My babysitter cancelled at the last minute, and I—" "Please," he interrupted, with a warm smile that transformed his serious face. "Call me Jackson. And who might this young man be?" Noah peeked out from behind Madison, eyeing the stranger cautiously. "This is Noah," Madison said, gently encouraging her son to step forward. "Noah, can you say hello to Mr. Ryan?" "Hello," Noah mumbled, still clinging to Madison's dress. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Noah," Jackson said, crouching down to Noah's eye level. "I hear this restaurant has excellent chocolate lava cake. Would you like to try some after dinner?" Noah's eyes widened with interest and he nodded slowly. "Wonderful." Jackson said, standing again to pull out Madison's chair. "Shall we?" As they settled at the table, Madison couldn't help but feel a wave of self-consciousness. Jackson Ryan was nothing like she expected, and certainly not the type of man who would be interested in a struggling single mother who worked as an elementary school art teacher. "Again, I'm really sorry about bringing Noah," she said quietly, as her son became occupied with the crayons and paper the server had thoughtfully provided. "If you'd prefer to reschedule, why would I want to do that?" Jackson asked, his expression genuinely puzzled. "I'm having dinner with a beautiful woman and meeting a very important young man. Seems like my lucky night." Madison blushed, unused to such direct compliments. "Jasmine told me a lot about you, but she failed to mention you were, well, you." Jackson chuckled. "And what exactly did she tell you about me?" "That you're successful, kind, and apparently good with children." She glanced at Noah, who was now drawing with intense concentration. "I hope I can live up to that description," Jackson said, his gaze lingering on her face in a way that made her heartbeat quicken. "Though I should confess something." Madison tensed, preparing herself for the inevitable letdown. This was where he would politely excuse himself or reveal some deal-breaking flaw. "Jasmine might have exaggerated my credentials with children," he said, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. "I don't have much experience, to be honest. No siblings, no nieces or nephews, but I've always wanted a family." The sincerity in his voice caught Madison off guard. Before she could respond, Noah tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, look," he said, proudly holding up his drawing. It was a colorful depiction of what appeared to be three people, a tall figure, a medium figure, and a small figure, all holding hands. "It's us having dinner with Mr. Ryan." Madison felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Noah, sweetie, that's wonderful," Jackson interrupted, his face lighting up as he studied the drawing. "You're quite the artist, Noah. Would you mind if I kept this? I could hang it in my office." Noah beamed with pride, and Madison felt something warm unfurl in her chest as she watched them interact. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to wonder, could this actually work? As their dinner progressed, Madison found herself increasingly drawn to Jackson. Behind his success and wealth, there was a genuine, down-to-earth quality that she hadn't expected. He listened intently when she spoke about her teaching job and laughed easily at her stories. With Noah, he was patient and attentive, never showing a hint of annoyance when the boy interrupted or asked endless questions. But as the evening wore on, Madison couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. There were moments when Jackson seemed distracted, his gaze drifting past her to scan the restaurant, and occasionally, when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression would shift from warm engagement to something more guarded, almost troubled. As the waiter cleared their dessert plates, Noah having enthusiastically demolished his promised chocolate lava cake, Jackson's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed. The warmth vanished from his eyes, replaced by an intensity that made Madison shiver. "I apologize," he said, his voice suddenly formal as he stood. "There's something I need to attend to. Please excuse me for a moment." As he walked away, Madison watched him engage in a heated conversation with someone near the restaurant entrance, a tall man in a dark suit whose posture screamed security personnel. Noah tugged at her sleeve again. "Mummy, is Mr. Ryan a superhero? He looks like one when he's serious." Madison forced a smile, trying to ignore the knot of unease forming in her stomach. "No, sweetie. He's just a businessman." But as Jackson returned to their table, his face now composed but his eyes alert, Madison couldn't help but wonder, who exactly was Jackson Ryan, and what secrets was he hiding behind that charming smile? Madison watched as Jackson settled back into his seat, his expression carefully neutral. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. The carefree man who had been making her son giggle minutes ago had been replaced by someone more calculated, more controlled. "Is everything all right?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Just business," Jackson replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Nothing for you to worry about." Noah, oblivious to the shift in atmosphere, yawned widely, his eyelids growing heavy after the excitement and sugar of the evening. "I think someone's ready to head home," Jackson observed, his voice softening as he looked at the drowsy child. "May I walk you both to your car?" Madison hesitated. Despite the pleasant evening, the glimpse of that other side of Jackson, the businessman, the billionaire, had reminded her of the vast differences between their worlds. "That's kind of you, but we actually took the bus. Our apartment isn't far from the stop." Something flickered across Jackson's face. Surprise, perhaps, or concern. "The bus at this hour, please. Allow me to call my driver, I insist." Before Madison could protest, Jackson had already signaled to the waiter for the check. When it arrived, he paid without even glancing at the amount, adding a tip that made Madison's eyes widen. "Really, we're fine with the bus," she said, uncomfortable with the idea of accepting more from this man she barely knew. Jackson leaned forward slightly, his blue eyes intent. "Madison, it's nearly 10 o'clock. You have a sleepy child. Please let me make sure you get home safely." The genuine concern in his voice weakened her resolve. Plus, Noah was practically asleep in his chair, his head nodding forward as he fought to stay awake. "All right," she conceded. "Thank you." Outside, a sleek black car pulled up almost immediately. The driver, an older man with a kind face, emerged and opened the rear door. "Ms. Clark and Noah need a ride home, Vincent," Jackson said, "and I'll be joining them." Madison's eyebrows rose. "That's not necessary. I'd like to if you don't mind," Jackson said, his voice gentle but somehow leaving no room for argument. "Call it old-fashioned, but I'd feel better seeing you safely to your door." The ride to Madison's apartment in the less affluent east side of the city was brief but filled with a charged silence. Noah had fallen asleep against Madison's side, and Jackson seemed content to look out the window, occasionally asking polite questions about landmarks they passed. When they arrived at her building, an aging brick structure that had seen better days, Madison felt a flush of embarrassment. The contrast between the luxury of the restaurant and the reality of her life couldn't have been more stark. "This is us," she said quietly, as Vincent pulled to a stop. "Thank you for dinner and for the ride." "Let me help you with Noah," Jackson offered, already opening his door. Together, they managed to get the sleeping boy out of the car without waking him. Jackson gently lifted Noah into his arms, the child's head resting against his shoulder as if they'd done this 100 times before. The image made something twist painfully in Madison's chest. "Third floor," she whispered, leading the way into the building. The elevator was perpetually out of service, so they climbed the stairs in silence, Madison acutely aware of every scuff on the wall, every flickering light bulb in the hallway. At her door, she fumbled for her keys, hyper-conscious of Jackson's proximity and the fact that her apartment was barely larger than his car. But when she glanced back at him, there was no judgment in his eyes, only warmth as he looked down at Noah's sleeping form. "He's a remarkable boy," Jackson said softly. "You've done an amazing job with him." "Thank you," Madison replied, finally getting the door open. "He's my whole world." Inside, Jackson followed her to Noah's small bedroom, waiting patiently as she turned down the covers before laying the boy gently on his bed. Madison removed Noah's shoes and pulled the blanket over him, pressing a soft kiss to his forehead. When she turned, Jackson was watching them with an expression so full of longing that it took her breath away. But in an instant, it was gone, replaced by his now familiar polite smile. "Would you like some coffee?" Madison offered, as they stepped back into the living room, immediately regretting the words. Why prolong this evening when they both knew there was no future here? To her surprise, Jackson nodded. "I'd like that very much." While Madison prepared the coffee, Jackson wandered around her small living room, examining the photographs on the wall, mostly of Noah at various ages, but a few of Madison with an older couple she assumed were her parents. "You're an artist," he remarked, stopping in front of a small canvas hanging near the window, a landscape of the city park painted in vibrant colors. Madison smiled as she brought 2 mugs to the coffee table. "I teach art at Westlake Elementary. Painting is more of a hobby." "You're very talented," Jackson said, accepting the mug she offered. "The way you capture light, it's remarkable." "Now I know you're just being polite," Madison laughed, settling onto the worn couch. "But thank you." Jackson took a seat beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "I never say things I don't mean, Madison." The intensity in his gaze made her look away. "So, Jackson Ryan, tech investor, philanthropist, billionaire. Why agree to a blind date set up by my friend?" A faint smile touched his lips. Would you believe me if I said I was tired of meeting women who only saw dollar signs when they looked at me? I would, Madison nodded. But that doesn't explain why you stayed after I showed up late with a 6-year-old in tow. Jackson considered her question for a moment. When you walked in, you were clearly flustered, probably embarrassed, but the way you held your son's hand, the way you put his needs first despite your obvious anxiety, it told me everything I needed to know about you. Madison felt her face grow warm under his steady gaze. And what was that? That you're real, he said simply. Authentic. You care more about your son's happiness than impressing a stranger. The conversation flowed easily after that. Jackson told her about growing up in a small town in Georgia, about his early fascination with computers, and the startup he'd founded in college that had unexpectedly taken off. Madison shared stories about Noah's antics, her struggles and joys as a single parent, and her dreams of one day opening her own art studio, where children could explore their creativity freely. Why haven't you? Jackson asked. Opened a studio, I mean. Madison laughed without humor. Oh, you know, the usual obstacles. Time, money, the fact that I can barely cover rent and childcare on a teacher's salary. She regretted the words immediately, not wanting to sound like she was fishing for charity, but Jackson merely nodded thoughtfully. Dreams are important, he said. They give us something to work toward. As the evening wore on, Madison found herself relaxing in his presence. There was something about Jackson that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced in years. When he spoke, he listened to her responses with genuine interest. When he laughed, the sound was rich and unrehearsed. But just as she was beginning to think, perhaps there could be something between them, Jackson's phone buzzed again. This time his expression darkened as he read the message. I have to go, he said, standing abruptly. I'm sorry. Is everything okay? Madison asked, concerned by the sudden tension in his posture. It will be, he assured her, though his tight smile did little to convince her. Madison, I've enjoyed this evening more than I can express. Would it be all right if I called you tomorrow? Of course, she said, walking him to the door. He paused in the doorway, his eyes searching hers. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her and was surprised by how much she wanted him to. Instead, he took her hand and pressed his lips gently to her knuckles. Thank you for a wonderful evening, he said. Please tell Noah goodbye for me. And then he was gone, leaving Madison staring at her closed door, her hand still tingling from his touch. The next morning, Madison woke to Noah's excited voice. Mom! Mom! Look what Mr. Ryan sent. Blinking sleepily, Madison sat up to find her son bouncing on her bed, clutching a large plush Tyrannosaurus Rex, exactly like the one he'd lost. What? How did... The man at the door brought it, and there's a note. Noah thrust a cream-colored envelope at her. Inside was a handwritten card. For Noah, Rex needed a twin brother. And for Madison, thank you for one of the most genuine evenings I've had in years. Until we meet again. Jackson. Madison stared at the note, conflicting emotions swirling within her. The gesture was thoughtful, even sweet, but it also reminded her of the reality of their situation. Jackson Ryan could make her son's wish come true with a snap of his fingers, while she had to save for weeks to afford such luxuries. Still, she couldn't deny the warmth that spread through her chest at the thought of him remembering such a small detail about Noah's missing toy. Her phone chimed with a message. Unknown number. Good morning, Madison. I hope Noah likes his new friend. Would you both do me the honor of joining me for a picnic in the park this Saturday? Jackson. Before she could respond, another message appeared. P.S. I promise no business interruptions this time. Madison bit her lip, her finger hovering over the screen. She should say no. Getting involved with someone like Jackson Ryan could only lead to complications. He lived in a world of wealth and influence that she could never belong in. And yet, Mom, can we see Mr. Ryan again? Noah asked, hugging his new dinosaur tightly. He's nice and he doesn't look at you like Mr. Davidson does. Madison frowned. How does Mr. Davidson look at me? Mr. Davidson was the father of one of Noah's classmates, a recently divorced man who had asked her out several times. Noah scrunched up his face, like you're a cookie he wants to eat. Mr. Ryan looks at you like you're the son. Out of the mouths of babes, Madison thought, her heart skipping a beat. Before she could overthink it, she typed a reply. Noah loves his dinosaur, thank you. We'd be happy to join you on Saturday. As she pressed send, Madison couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into something much bigger than a simple date. Little did she know just how right she was, or that the secrets Jackson Ryan was hiding would soon turn her carefully constructed life upside down. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a picnic. Madison spent an uncharacteristic amount of time selecting her outfit, settling on a casual yellow sundress that Noah assured her was pretty, like sunshine. As they walked to the city park, Noah skipped ahead, his new dinosaur clutched firmly in one hand. "Remember your manners, okay?" Madison reminded him. "And stay where I can see you." "I know, Mom," Noah said, with the exaggerated patience of a child who'd heard the same instructions countless times. "Do you think Mr. Ryan will push me on the swings?" Madison smiled. "You can ask him, but remember he might be busy talking to Mommy." When they reached their designated meeting spot by the large oak tree near the playground, Jackson was already waiting. He'd spread a checkered blanket on the grass and was unpacking what appeared to be a gourmet picnic from a wicker basket. Gone was the businessman in tailored clothes. Today he wore jeans and a simple navy t-shirt that made him look younger, more approachable. Noah spotted him first and ran ahead. "Mr. Ryan, look, I brought Rex's brother." Jackson looked up, his face breaking into a genuine smile. "That's excellent. What's his name?" "Max," Noah declared, sitting down on the blanket without invitation. "They're twins, but Max is 2 minutes older." "Very important detail," Jackson agreed seriously, before looking up at Madison. The warmth in his gaze made her stomach flutter. "Good morning, Madison. You look beautiful." "Thank you," she said, suddenly shy as she joined them on the blanket. "This looks amazing." The spread was impressive. Fresh fruit, artisanal cheeses, crusty bread, and what appeared to be homemade lemonade in a glass pitcher. "Did you prepare all this yourself?" she asked, impressed. Jackson's cheeks reddened slightly. "I'd like to say yes, but my housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, deserves the credit. I can barely make toast without burning it." Madison laughed, relaxing a little. There was something endearing about this powerful man admitting his culinary shortcomings. The morning passed pleasantly. They ate, talked, and eventually accompanied Noah to the playground, where Jackson proved to be an enthusiastic swing pusher and an even more dedicated sandbox architect. Madison found herself watching them, a bittersweet ache in her chest. Noah hadn't had a male figure in his life since his father left, and seeing him interact so naturally with Jackson was both wonderful and terrifying. "He's a remarkable child," Jackson said, joining her on the bench, while Noah played with some other children. "So bright and curious." Madison smiled proudly. "He's my greatest achievement." "You should be proud," Jackson agreed, his hand finding hers on the bench between them. The contact sent a pleasant shiver up her arm. "Madison, there's something I need to tell you." The serious tone made her tense. "That sounds ominous." Jackson shook his head quickly. "No, nothing bad. It's just, I need to leave town for a few days. Business in Tokyo that can't be postponed." "Oh," Madison said, trying to hide her disappointment. "Of course, you don't need to explain." "But I want to," he insisted, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "I've cleared my schedule for the next month after this trip. No interruptions, no emergencies. If you'll allow it, I'd like to spend that time getting to know you and Noah better." Madison stared at him, caught off guard by the declaration. "Jackson, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now," he assured her. "I know this is fast, but I feel a connection with you that I haven't felt with anyone in a very long time." Before Madison could respond, a commotion from the playground caught their attention. Noah was standing at the top of the slide, his face contorted with anger, while a bigger boy held Max the dinosaur out of reach. Madison was on her feet immediately, but Jackson was faster. By the time she reached the playground, he had already diffused the situation. The bigger boy was sullenly returning the toy to Noah, while Jackson crouched at eye level, speaking to both children in low, calm tones. "Everyone deserves respect," she heard him saying. "That includes people's belongings. Now can you both shake hands?" Reluctantly, the boys complied. The other child's mother arrived, flustered and apologetic, and soon both boys were playing again, as if nothing had happened. "That was impressive," Madison said, as Jackson rejoined her. "You have a way with children." "I just treated them like people," he shrugged. "Most adults forget that children have the same emotions we do, just fewer tools to express them." As they packed up their picnic later that afternoon, Noah had grown quiet, dragging his feet as they prepared to leave. "What's wrong, buddy?" Madison asked. "I don't want Mr. Ryan to go to Tokyo," Noah said, lower lip trembling slightly. "Who's going to protect Max and Rex?" Jackson knelt down, his expression serious. "That's a very important job, Noah. Do you think you could handle it while I'm gone? I'll only be away for 3 days." Noah considered this, then nodded solemnly. "I can do it. But you have to promise to come back." "I promise," Jackson said, holding out his pinky finger. "Pinky swear, and that's the strongest promise there is." As they hooked fingers, Madison felt a lump form in her throat. She'd been so focused on protecting herself from getting hurt that she hadn't considered how quickly Noah might become attached. When they said goodbye at Madison's apartment, Jackson pulled her aside. "I fly out tonight, but I'll call you tomorrow from Tokyo. Is that all right?" Madison nodded, suddenly afraid to trust her voice. "And when I return—" He hesitated, then continued, "There's something important I'd like to talk to you about. Something I should have mentioned sooner." A flicker of unease passed through her. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," he assured her, though something in his eyes gave her pause. "Everything is fine. I just need to be completely honest with you about certain aspects of my life." Before she could question him further, he leaned in and gently pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was brief but tender, filled with promise. When he pulled away, Madison felt slightly dizzy. "Until Thursday," he whispered, then turned to say goodbye to Noah. True to his word, Jackson called the next day and the next, despite the 13-hour time difference. He spoke to Noah first each time, asking about school and dinosaur adventures, before talking with Madison, their conversations stretching late into her night. On Wednesday evening, Madison's phone rang just as she was putting Noah to bed. Expecting Jackson, she was surprised to see Jasmine's name on the screen. "Hey, Jazz," she answered, stepping into the hallway. "Turn on the news," Jasmine said without preamble, her voice tight with tension. "Channel 7, now." Frowning, Madison went to the living room and switched on the small television. The screen filled with chaotic footage of what appeared to be a hostage situation in progress. The scrolling headline made her blood run cold. "Breaking: American billionaire among hostages in Tokyo hotel siege." "Oh my God," Madison breathed, sinking onto the couch as the camera zoomed in on a familiar face being escorted into the hotel just before the attack began. Jackson Ryan. "They're saying a radical anti-capitalism group has taken over the Grand Tokyo Hotel," Jasmine said through the phone. "They've got at least 20 hostages, including Jackson and several other business leaders who were there for some tech conference." Madison could barely process the information. On screen, the reporter was explaining that the situation had been ongoing for 6 hours, with police and special forces surrounding the building. "Madison, are you okay?" Jasmine's voice seemed to come from far away. "He called me this morning," Madison whispered. "He sounded fine. He was telling me about the koi pond in the hotel garden." "Oh, honey," Jasmine said softly. "I'm coming over. Don't watch this alone." Madison nodded numbly, then remembered Jasmine couldn't see her. "Okay. Thanks." She hung up and stared at the screen, where experts were now discussing the possible motivations of the attackers and the likelihood of a successful rescue operation. One commentator mentioned that Jackson Ryan would be a particularly valuable hostage, given his wealth and connections. A soft noise from the doorway made Madison turn. Noah stood there in his dinosaur pajamas, eyes wide. "Mum, why are you crying? Is that Mr. Ryan on TV?" Madison quickly wiped her cheeks, unaware that tears had been falling. "Yes, sweetie, there's a problem at his hotel, but the police are helping." Noah padded over and climbed into her lap, his small body warm against hers. "Is he going to be okay? He pinky promised he'd come back." "I hope so, sweetie," Madison whispered, holding him tight. "I really hope so." The next 24 hours passed in an agonizing blur. Jasmine stayed over, helping with Noah and monitoring the news, while Madison alternated between pacing and sitting frozen in front of the television. By Thursday afternoon, there had been little progress reported. The hostage-takers had released 3 people, an elderly man needing medication and a woman with her young child, but had made no move to negotiate further. Madison had just put Noah down for a nap when her phone rang with an unknown number. Her heart leapt to her throat as she answered. "Madison Clark?" A formal male voice, unfamiliar. "Yes, that's me." "My name is Daniel Harper. I work for Mr. Ryan. I understand you're acquainted with him. Madison swallowed hard. Yes. Is he? Is there news? Not the kind that's being shared with the media, Daniel replied cryptically. Mr. Ryan left explicit instructions that you be kept informed if anything happened to him. A cold feeling spread through Madison's chest. What are you saying? I'm saying that a car will be arriving at your apartment in 30 minutes. Mr. Ryan requested that you and your son be brought to his residence for your safety. Our safety? Madison echoed, confused. We're not in any danger. There was a pause on the line. Miss Clark, there are aspects of Mr. Ryan's life that you're not aware of. The situation in Tokyo is complicated. These people may have information about his personal connections. For your protection, we need to move you to a secure location. Madison's mind raced. This sounded like something from a spy movie, not real life. I'm not going anywhere with strangers. My son is napping, and we're perfectly safe here. I understand your reluctance, Daniel said, his voice softening slightly. But Mr. Ryan was very specific. He cares deeply about your well-being. Please, at least meet with the security team when they arrive. They'll explain everything. Before Madison could protest further, he'd hung up. She stood in her small kitchen, phone clutched in her hand, trying to make sense of what was happening. Jackson had mentioned needing to tell her something important. Was this it? Some kind of secret life that put them in danger? 30 minutes later, precisely as promised, there was a knock at her door. Through the peephole, Madison could see a woman in a neat black suit, her posture professional but non-threatening. Keeping the chain on, Madison opened the door a crack. Yes, Miss Clark? I'm Grace Matthews, head of security for Mr. Ryan's personal team. The woman held up an ID card. May I come in? There are matters we need to discuss urgently. Madison studied her for a moment, then made a decision. She closed the door, removed the chain, and reopened it. My son is sleeping. Please keep your voice down. Grace nodded and stepped inside, her sharp eyes taking in the apartment in one sweeping glance. Thank you for seeing me. I understand this must seem alarming. That's putting it mildly, Madison replied. Why exactly would we be in danger? Grace's expression remained neutral. Mr. Ryan has many enemies, Ms. Clark. People who would use his personal connections as leverage. Your dinner at Riverside Bistro didn't go unnoticed by the press. There was a photograph. She pulled out her phone and showed Madison a tabloid website. There it was, a grainy image of Madison and Noah entering the restaurant and another of Jackson walking them to his car. The headline read, Tech Billionaire's Mystery Woman and Child. Has America's most eligible bachelor found a family? Madison felt sick. This doesn't mean anything. We've only been on 2 dates. It doesn't matter, Grace said firmly. The perception is what counts, and right now, with Mr. Ryan in a vulnerable position, we need to ensure all his personal connections are protected. Madison sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly weak. What exactly is happening in Tokyo? The news isn't saying much. Grace hesitated, then sat across from her. What I'm about to tell you is confidential. The tech conference is a cover. Mr. Ryan and several other business leaders were meeting with government officials about a new international security protocol. The attack isn't random, it's targeted. Madison stared at her. Are you saying Jackson is some kind of government agent? No, Grace shook her head. But his technology has applications beyond the commercial sphere. That's all I can say. As Madison tried to process this information, another knock came at the door. More insistent this time. Grace was on her feet instantly, hand moving to her side, where Madison suddenly realized a weapon was concealed. Were you expecting anyone? Grace asked quietly. No, Madison whispered, fear clawing at her throat as she thought of Noah sleeping in the next room. Grace moved silently to the door, checking the peephole. Her posture relaxed slightly. It's all right. It's one of ours. She opened the door to reveal a tall man in a dark suit, his expression urgent. He whispered something in Grace's ear that made her eyes widen. When? She asked sharply. The man murmured a response. Grace turned to Madison, her professional demeanor cracking slightly to reveal genuine concern. Miss Clark, we need to leave immediately. The situation has developed. What do you mean? What's happened to Jackson? Madison demanded, fear making her voice shake. Grace and the man exchanged a look that sent a chill down Madison's spine. Miss Clark, Grace said carefully. "The hotel in Tokyo. There's been an explosion." "An explosion?" Madison repeated, her voice barely audible. The room seemed to tilt around her. "Was anyone... did they..." "We don't have confirmed details yet," Grace said, her tone gentle but urgent. "That's why we need to move you to a secure location immediately. Mr. Ryan's residence has a state-of-the-art security system and staff who can protect you while we gather more information." Madison's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. Just days ago, her biggest concern had been paying this month's rent on time. Now she was discussing explosions and security protocols with strangers in suits. "I need to get Noah," she said, pushing herself to her feet, "and pack some things." "We have everything you might need at the residence," Grace assured her. "But yes, please get your son. We'll have a car waiting downstairs in 5 minutes." Madison moved through the apartment in a daze, gathering Noah's favorite toys and her own essential items. When she gently woke Noah, he blinked at her sleepily. "Are we going to see Mr. Ryan?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "Is he back from Tokyo?" Madison swallowed the lump in her throat. "No, sweetie. We're going to visit his house for a little while, like a special vacation." Noah's eyes widened. "Does he have a swimming pool? Tyler at school has a swimming pool." "I don't know," Madison said, helping him put on his shoes. "We'll have to see." 20 minutes later, they were settled in the back of a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, driving through the city toward the exclusive Hillcrest neighborhood. Noah pressed his face against the window, excited by the unexpected adventure, while Madison clutched her phone, refreshing news sites for any updates on the Tokyo situation. The reports were chaotic and contradictory. Some claimed the explosion had been minor, a diversionary tactic by police. Others reported significant casualties. None mentioned Jackson specifically. "Try not to worry," Grace said from the front passenger seat, noting Madison's distress. "Mr. Ryan has survived difficult situations before." Madison looked up sharply. "What does that mean? What kind of situations?" Grace seemed to choose her words carefully. "Mr. Ryan's business interests are diverse. They sometimes take him to unstable regions. He's experienced in handling crises." Before Madison could press for more details, Noah gasped as they turned through an imposing iron gate and up a long, tree-lined driveway. At the end stood Jackson's home, a stunning modern mansion of glass and stone nestled among perfectly manicured gardens. "It looks like a castle," Noah exclaimed, his face alight with wonder. It did indeed look like something from a fairy tale, Madison thought, though at the moment it only reinforced how far removed Jackson's reality was from their own. Inside, the house was both breathtaking and surprisingly welcoming. Modern art adorned the walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the surrounding forest and gardens. An older woman with silver hair and kind eyes greeted them in the foyer. "Mrs. Abernathy," Grace said, "this is Ms. Clark and her son Noah. They'll be staying with us for a while." "Of course," Mrs. Abernathy said, her smile warm despite the circumstances. "I've prepared the blue suite, and perhaps young Noah would like some hot chocolate after his journey." Noah, suddenly shy, nodded and slipped his hand into Madison's. "That's very kind," Madison said, trying to maintain her composure. "But I'd really like to know what's happening with Jackson. Is there any news?" Grace and Mrs. Abernathy exchanged a glance. "Perhaps we could discuss this after Noah is settled," Mrs. Abernathy suggested gently. Understanding the implication, Madison nodded. "Noah, would you like to have hot chocolate with Mrs. Abernathy while I talk with Ms. Matthews?" Once Noah was happily ensconced in the kitchen with cookies and hot chocolate, Grace led Madison to a sleek office at the back of the house. A wall of screens displayed various news channels, all covering the Tokyo situation. "What aren't you telling me?" Madison asked, her patience wearing thin. "I deserve to know the truth." Grace sighed, her professional facade slipping slightly. "You're right. Please sit down." Madison perched on the edge of a leather chair, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Mr. Ryan isn't just a tech investor," Grace began. "His primary business now is security technology, specifically advanced systems designed to protect critical infrastructure from cyber attacks. His current project is a collaborative effort with several governments to safeguard nuclear facilities." "The meeting in Tokyo?" Grace nodded. "The group that took over the hotel is a sophisticated organization with ties to international terrorism. They targeted this meeting specifically." Madison felt cold dread spreading through her chest. "And the explosion?" "It was controlled. A breach attempt by Japanese special forces, Grace confirmed. But in the chaos, several hostages managed to escape, including some of Mr. Ryan's colleagues. We're still waiting for confirmation on his status. So you don't know if he's alive or dead, Madison said flatly. Grace met her gaze directly. No, we don't. Madison closed her eyes, trying to process everything. A week ago, Jackson Ryan had been a stranger. Now, the thought of losing him left her feeling hollow. Why us? She asked finally, opening her eyes. Why bring Noah and me here? We're nothing to him. Something like sympathy flashed across Grace's face. Ms. Clark, I've worked for Mr. Ryan for 8 years. In that time, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. And the way he is with your son. It's clear you both matter a great deal to him. Before Madison could respond, the door opened and Daniel Harper, whom she recognized from his voice on the phone, entered, his expression grim. We've got confirmation, he said to Grace, then noticed Madison. Ms. Clark, I didn't realize you were in here. Tell me, Madison demanded, rising to her feet. Is he alive? Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Yes, Mr. Ryan is alive, but he's been injured. They're airlifting him to Mercy General as we speak. Relief flooded through Madison so intensely that her knees nearly buckled. Injured, how badly? When will he arrive? The jet should land in about 4 hours, Daniel said. As for his injuries, we don't have details yet, but he was conscious when they evacuated him. That's a good sign. Madison sank back into the chair, overwhelmed. I need to see him. Of course, Grace said. We'll arrange transportation to the hospital when he arrives. The next few hours passed in a strange blur. Mrs. Abernathy showed Madison and Noah to their suite, a beautiful set of rooms with plush furnishings and a view of the garden. Noah was enthralled by the enormous television and the basket of toys that had mysteriously appeared, seemingly chosen with his interests in mind. Mom, look, he exclaimed, pulling out a dinosaur puzzle. Can we do this while we wait for Mr. Ryan? Madison forced a smile. Sure, sweetie, that sounds perfect. As they worked on the puzzle together on the thick carpet, Madison tried to reconcile the Jackson she knew, gentle, attentive, slightly awkward at times, with this new version, a powerful figure involved in international security, targeted by terrorists. Had any of it been real? Their connection, his interest in Noah, the way he looked at her as if she were something precious, or had she simply been a convenient cover, a normal family to complete his public image? Mom, you're putting the pieces in the wrong spots, Noah said, pulling her back to the present. Sorry, buddy, my mind is elsewhere. Noah studied her face with a seriousness beyond his years. Are you worried about Mr. Ryan? Madison nodded, not seeing any point in lying. Yes, I am. He's hurt and they're bringing him to the hospital here. Is he going to die? Noah asked bluntly, in the way children often did. No, Madison said firmly, praying she was telling the truth. He's a very strong man, but he might need to rest for a while to get better. Noah nodded, satisfied with this explanation. When he's better, can we all go get ice cream together, like a family? The innocent question pierced Madison's heart. We'll see, Noah. Let's just focus on him getting better first, okay? 3 hours later, Grace knocked on their door. The jet has landed early. They're taking Mr. Ryan to the hospital now. The car is ready whenever you are. Madison glanced at Noah, who had finally fallen asleep on the sofa after the excitement of the day. I don't want to wake him. Mrs. Abernathy can stay with him, Grace suggested. She raised 4 children of her own and is excellent with kids. We can call you immediately if he wakes up. After a moment's hesitation, Madison agreed. 10 minutes later, she was in the back of the SUV again, racing toward Mercy General Hospital. What should I expect? She asked Grace, who sat beside her, her calm presence somehow reassuring. Mr. Ryan has a private suite on the top floor, Grace replied. Security is already in place. As for his condition, she hesitated. I don't have details, but the medical team on the jet reported that his injuries are serious, but not life-threatening. When they arrived at the hospital, Grace led her through a private entrance and up a dedicated elevator to the top floor. The hallway was lined with men and women in suits, security personnel who nodded respectfully as they passed. Outside a set of double doors, a doctor in scrubs was speaking with Daniel. They both looked up as Madison approached. Ms. Clark, Daniel said, extending his hand. This is Dr. Wells, Mr. Ryan's personal physician. How is he? Madison asked, ignoring the formalities. Dr. Wells's expression was professional but kind. Mr. Ryan sustained a concussion, 2 broken ribs, and various contusions during the rescue operation. He also has some smoke inhalation issues we're monitoring. However, none of his injuries are life-threatening. He's sedated right now but should regain consciousness within a few hours. Relief washed over Madison. Can I see him? Of course, Dr. Wells nodded. Though I should warn you, he looks worse than he is. The facial bruising is quite dramatic. Nothing could have prepared Madison for the sight of Jackson lying motionless in the hospital bed, hooked up to various monitors. His handsome face was indeed badly bruised, with a cut above his left eyebrow. An oxygen mask covered his nose and mouth, and his right arm was wrapped in bandages. Madison approached the bed slowly, her heart pounding. Despite his injuries, the steady rise and fall of his chest reassured her that he was indeed alive. "Oh, Jackson," she whispered, carefully taking his uninjured left hand in hers. "What have you gotten yourself into?" To her shock, his fingers twitched, then gently squeezed hers. His eyelids fluttered, then opened, revealing those striking blue eyes, slightly unfocused but unmistakably aware. "Madison?" His voice was raspy, barely audible through the oxygen mask. "I'm here," she said, tears springing to her eyes. "You're safe now." He reached up with a shaking hand to pull the mask aside. "Noah." "He's fine. He's at your house with Mrs. Abernathy." Jackson nodded slightly, wincing at the movement. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For not telling you everything," he said, his voice strengthening slightly. "For putting you in danger." Madison shook her head. "Grace explained some of it. Your security work, the meeting in Tokyo." Jackson's eyes closed briefly, then opened again with more clarity. "Not just that, there's more you need to know." "It can wait," Madison insisted. "You need to rest." "No," he said with unexpected firmness. "I need you to understand." He tried to sit up, grimacing in pain. "Please lie still," Madison urged, pressing the call button for the nurse. "Whatever it is, I promise I'll listen, but you need to recover first." Jackson subsided, but his eyes remained locked on hers, intense despite his weakened state. "I never meant to involve you in any of this. When Jasmine arranged our date, I had no idea." He paused, struggling for breath. "Shh," Madison soothed. "It's okay." "No, it's not," he insisted. "Madison, I need you to know the reason I was so distracted at dinner that first night. The man I spoke with, he just informed me that my wife had been found." Madison felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her. "Your wife?" Jackson's eyes never left hers. "My wife, Amanda, disappeared 3 years ago during a humanitarian mission in Eastern Europe. Her medical convoy was attacked, and she was presumed dead, but her body was never found." Madison pulled her hand away, feeling sick. "You're married?" "No," Jackson said quickly, then winced again. "I mean, legally, yes, but we believed she was dead. Everyone did." Then last week, intelligence sources reported a woman matching her description at a remote clinic near the border. That's what the Tokyo meeting was partially about, arranging extraction for her and other humanitarian workers being held there. Madison struggled to process this revelation. "So when we met," Jackson said, his voice softening, "I was a man who had spent 3 years mourning a woman I loved, finally trying to move forward. And then you walked into that restaurant with Noah, and something inside me came alive again." A nurse entered the room, frowning at Jackson's displaced oxygen mask. "Mr. Ryan, you need to rest. Your oxygen levels are dropping." Jackson ignored her, his gaze still fixed on Madison. "The night of our first date, I learned that Amanda might be alive. I've spent every moment since then trying to confirm it and arrange her rescue if it's true." That's what the Tokyo meeting was really about. Not just security protocols, but a coordinated extraction operation. The nurse gave Madison a pleading look as she replaced Jackson's oxygen mask. "Please, he needs to remain calm." Madison nodded, trying to compose herself. "I should go," she said quietly. "You need to rest." Panic flashed in Jackson's eyes. He pulled the mask aside again. "Madison, please, I need you to understand. If Amanda is alive, I have obligations to her. But what I feel for you and Noah, it's real. It's the most real thing I've felt in years. The monitor beside his bed began to beep more rapidly, reflecting his agitation. Mr. Ryan, the nurse said sharply, you need to calm down. Madison backed toward the door, her mind reeling. I'll come back tomorrow, she promised, though she wasn't sure if she meant it. When you're stronger. Jackson's eyes held hers for one more moment, before the nurse replaced his mask and administered something through his IV that made his eyelids droop. In the hallway, Madison leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. A wife. A presumed dead wife who might actually be alive. It was too much to process. Grace appeared at her elbow. Miss Clark, are you all right? Madison laughed bitterly. Did you know? About his wife? Grace's expression confirmed that she did. It's complicated. So everyone keeps saying, Madison replied, straightening up. I'd like to go back to my son now. The ride back to Jackson's mansion passed in silence. Madison stared out the window, watching the city lights blur through her tears. How had her life become so complicated in just 1 week? And what was she supposed to tell Noah, who had already grown so attached to Jackson? When they arrived, Madison was surprised to find Noah still asleep, exactly where she'd left him. Mrs. Abernathy sat nearby, knitting quietly. He didn't wake once, the older woman assured her. Such a sweet child. Madison nodded her thanks, too emotionally exhausted for conversation. Ms. Clark, Mrs. Abernathy said gently, I know this is not my place, but I've worked for Mr. Ryan for 12 years. I was here through everything with Amanda. The grief nearly destroyed him. Madison looked at her, uncertain where this was leading. When he came home after meeting you and Noah, Mrs. Abernathy continued, it was the first time in 3 years I'd seen him truly smile. Whatever he told you tonight, please don't judge him too harshly. With that, the housekeeper excused herself, leaving Madison alone with her sleeping son and her turbulent thoughts. The next morning, Madison woke to Noah's excited voice. Mom! Mom! Look at the garden! There's a treehouse! Bleary-eyed from a night of fitful sleep, Madison joined Noah at the window. Sure enough, a beautifully crafted treehouse was nestled in the branches of an enormous oak tree, complete with a rope ladder and a slide. Can we go see it? Please, Noah begged. Unable to resist his enthusiasm, Madison agreed. As they explored the treehouse, which was nicer than some actual houses Madison had lived in, Mrs. Abernathy appeared below. Breakfast is ready whenever you are, she called up, and Mr. Ryan is on his way home. Madison froze. What? He's being discharged already? He insisted, Mrs. Abernathy replied with a knowing smile. Said hospitals make him worse, not better. 2 hours later, Madison stood in the grand foyer, watching as Daniel and another security team member helped Jackson from the car. He moved slowly, clearly in pain despite his attempt to hide it, but he was walking under his own power. When he saw Madison, he stopped, dismissing his helpers with a nod. So you're still here, he said, relief evident in his voice. We were about to leave, actually, Madison replied, keeping her distance. I just wanted Noah to have breakfast first. Jackson's face fell. I understand. But before you go, please let me explain everything properly. I owe you that much. Madison hesitated, then nodded. Noah is in the treehouse with Mrs. Abernathy. We can talk in your office. Once they were seated, Jackson moving gingerly to accommodate his injured ribs, Madison waited expectantly, her heart guarded. Amanda and I were married for 5 years, Jackson began, his voice steady despite his obvious physical discomfort. She was a doctor working with international aid organizations. 3 years ago, her convoy was attacked in a conflict zone. Everyone was presumed dead, but some bodies were never recovered, including hers. He paused, his gaze distant. I spent a year searching for her, using every resource at my disposal. When all leads went cold, I had to accept that she was gone. The grief. It nearly destroyed me. I'm sorry, Madison said softly, and meant it. Jackson refocused on her. The night we met, I received information that a woman matching Amanda's description had been seen working at a remote clinic. I've spent every moment since trying to verify this information and, if true, arrange for her extraction. And has it been verified? Madison asked, steeling herself for the answer. Jackson met her gaze directly. Yes, it's her. The rescue operation was successful. That's what triggered the hostage situation in Tokyo. She's being transported to a military hospital in Germany as we speak. Madison felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. So your wife is alive, and you're still legally married? Yes to both, Jackson acknowledged. But Madison, the woman coming home, isn't the same woman I married. She's been through unimaginable trauma, and I'm not the same man she left behind. What are you saying? Madison asked, confused. Jackson leaned forward, wincing slightly. I'm saying that I made vows to Amanda that I intend to honor, to support her, to ensure she receives the best care possible, to help her rebuild her life. But I'm also saying that what I feel for you and Noah is real and unexpected and precious to me. Madison shook her head, rising from her chair. Jackson, I can't be part of some complex arrangement. I have Noah to think about. He's already getting attached to you, and I can't let him be hurt when you inevitably choose your wife. That's not what I'm suggesting, Jackson said, standing as well despite his obvious pain. I'm asking for time. Time for Amanda to heal. Time for us all to figure out what comes next. I know it's not fair to ask, but the door burst open and Noah ran in, his face alight with excitement. Mr. Ryan, you're back. He stopped short when he saw Jackson's bruised face. Whoa, you got really hurt. Jackson smiled, kneeling carefully to Noah's level despite his injuries. I did, but I'm getting better already. What do you think of the treehouse? It's awesome, Noah exclaimed. Mom said we have to go home, but I wish we could stay forever. Jackson glanced up at Madison, his eyes pleading. What if you could stay just for a little while until I'm feeling better? I could really use some help learning how to manage these crutches. Madison recognized the manipulation for what it was, but couldn't bring herself to disappoint Noah, whose face had lit up at the suggestion. Please, Mom, Noah begged. I can help Mr. Ryan get better. We'll see, Madison said, non-committally. Why don't you go ask Mrs. Abernathy if there are any more of those chocolate muffins left? When Noah had dashed off, Madison turned back to Jackson. That wasn't fair. I know, he admitted, but I'm desperate, Madison. I can't lose you both. You never had us to begin with, she reminded him gently. We've known each other for a week. Sometimes a week is all it takes to know what matters, Jackson said, his blue eyes intense despite the bruising around them. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking for a chance. Madison studied him, this complicated man who had upended her carefully structured life. I need time to think, and you need to focus on healing, both physically and whatever comes next with Amanda. Jackson nodded slowly. That's fair. Will you at least stay until I'm back on my feet? The doctor said it should only be a few days. Noah loves the treehouse, and there's plenty of room. You wouldn't have to see me if you didn't want to. Despite her better judgment, Madison found herself agreeing. A few days, that's all. Those few days stretched into a week, then two. Against her own cautions, Madison found herself drawn back into Jackson's orbit. They established a routine, breakfasts together with Noah. Then Madison would take him exploring the extensive grounds while Jackson worked from his home office. In the evenings, they would have dinner as a unit that felt increasingly like a family. Jackson never pressed, never demanded more than she was willing to give. He focused on healing, on spending time with Noah, on showing rather than telling Madison how much they meant to him. 2 weeks after the Tokyo incident, Madison found Jackson sitting alone on the terrace, staring out at the sunset. Noah was having a swimming lesson with the instructor Jackson had hired. It turned out he did have a pool, much to Noah's delight. May I join you? Madison asked. Jackson looked up, his face lighting up at the sight of her. The bruises had faded to yellowish smudges, and he moved with less pain now, always. As she sat beside him, he handed her a folder. I received this today. I wanted you to see it. Inside was a legal document, divorce papers already signed by Amanda Ryan. I don't understand, Madison said, looking up at him in confusion. Jackson's expression was both sad and resolute. Amanda and I spoke yesterday. She's recovering well physically, but emotionally. She's changed. We both have. She told me she'd known for some time that I was searching for her, but she chose not to reach out. Why? Because during those 3 years, she found purpose. And someone else. Jackson smiled faintly, a doctor who worked at the clinic with her. They've been together for nearly 2 years. Madison stared at him, processing this unexpected turn of events. So you're getting divorced, Jackson confirmed. Amicably, with mutual respect for the past we shared and the different futures we both want. He took her hand gently. I know it's still complicated. I know 2 weeks isn't long enough to be certain of anything, but I am certain of how I feel about you and Noah. Madison looked down at their intertwined fingers. I'm scared, Jackson. Everything has happened so fast, and our worlds are so different. They don't have to be, he said softly. Your world of creativity and compassion, of bedtime stories and dinosaur adventures, it's exactly what my world has been missing. From the pool came the sound of Noah's delighted laughter as he successfully swam a full length without assistance. They both turned to watch him, pride evident on both their faces. He's amazing, Jackson said, just like his mother. Madison felt the last of her resistance melting away. This past week had shown her a different side of Jackson, not the billionaire or the security expert, but the man who patiently helped Noah with his reading, who listened intently to Madison's dreams for her art studio, who showed through countless small gestures that he saw them both clearly and valued them exactly as they were. I think, Madison said slowly, that I might be falling in love with you, Jackson Ryan. His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. That's convenient because I know I'm in love with you, Madison Clark. As Jackson leaned in to kiss her, Noah's wet footsteps pattered across the terrace. Mom, Mr. Ryan, did you see me swim, all by myself? Jackson pulled back just enough to whisper, Think he'd mind if I asked you both to stay forever? Madison smiled against his lips, only one way to find out. As Noah launched himself into their embrace, showering them both with chlorinated water and unlimited enthusiasm, Madison knew that sometimes the most unexpected detours led exactly where you were meant to be all along.